The first sheriff's cruiser rolled to a stop just outside the stone gate. A second pulled in behind it, lights flashing across hundreds of acres of rolling pasture. Retired Marine Ethan Walker stood quietly, with a weathered leather folder tucked beneath one arm. Inside it was the original deed proving the land belonged to his family. Across the road, HOA President Victoria Hale folded her arms and smiled. "Deputy," she said confidently, "that's the man who's trespassing on our community property." The deputy looked from Victoria to Ethan. Ethan didn't argue. Instead, he slowly removed an old document from the folder and handed it over. The deputy read only the first page before his expression changed. He looked back toward Victoria. "You might want to explain something." Victoria's confident smile faded for the first time. But that wasn't even the biggest surprise waiting for everyone. If you enjoy stories where justice always wins, subscribe and let's begin. 3 days earlier, Ethan Walker had never planned to return home. After 22 years in the Marine Corps, he dreamed of a quiet life with his wife, Sarah. They imagined restoring an old ranch, raising horses, and finally enjoying the peace they had postponed for decades. That dream suddenly became real when Ethan learned that his late grandfather had left him 1,100 acres of family land outside the small town of Red Creek. The property had been in the Walker family for nearly a century. His grandfather often joked, "Land remembers who takes care of it." Driving through the front gate for the first time in years, Ethan felt that history all around him. Weathered fences stretched toward distant hills, an aging red barn stood proudly against the afternoon sky, and towering oak trees lined the long gravel driveway. "It still feels like home," Sarah whispered. Ethan smiled. "It always will." They spent the next 2 days inspecting buildings, walking property lines, and making plans for repairs. Everything seemed perfect. Until the third morning. A white envelope rested inside the old mailbox. Across the front were bold black letters. He opened the envelope. Inside was a demand for nearly $48,000 in unpaid HOA assessments, penalties, landscaping violations, and unauthorized land use. He read it twice, then laughed. "There has to be some mistake." Sarah wasn't laughing. The notice included satellite maps showing part of the family's ranch inside a luxury neighborhood called Oak Ridge Estates. Neither of them had ever heard of it. At the bottom was one sentence that changed everything. Failure to pay within 7 days may result in legal action and property seizure. Sarah looked at Ethan. "What if they actually believe this?" Ethan folded the letter carefully. "Then we'll show them the truth." But someone inside Oak Ridge Estates had already made another move. The following afternoon, Ethan drove through the neighborhood entrance to speak with the HOA board. Perfect lawns stretched in every direction. Luxury homes lined quiet streets. Children rode bicycles while sprinklers watered immaculate gardens. It looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Inside the clubhouse, nearly 50 homeowners filled the meeting room. At the front stood Victoria Hale. She greeted everyone with a polished smile before her eyes settled on Ethan. "So," she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear, "our trespasser finally decided to introduce himself." The room fell silent. Ethan remained calm. "I'm Ethan Walker. I inherited the ranch bordering this community. I believe you've made a mistake." Victoria didn't even glance at the documents he carried. "There is no mistake." She pointed toward a large community map hanging on the wall. "Those acres have been maintained by Oak Ridge Estates for years." Several homeowners nodded. Others looked uncertain. Ethan walked to the map. Something immediately caught his attention. The property boundary looked strangely uneven, as though someone had redrawn part of it. He turned toward Victoria. "Can I ask who prepared this survey?" For the first time, she hesitated. Only for a second. "Our records department." Before Ethan could ask another question, Victoria slammed a violation notice onto the table. "You have 72 hours to remove your fences from HOA property." A murmur spread through the crowd. Sarah squeezed Ethan's arm. Something wasn't right. Near the back of the room, an elderly man quietly lowered his head. He looked disturbed by what he had just heard. As everyone began leaving, The man slipped a folded note into Ethan's hand without saying a word. Ethan waited until he reached the parking lot before opening it. Only 7 words were written inside. "The maps are fake. Trust nobody here." Ethan looked up. The elderly man had already disappeared. And somewhere nearby, someone was secretly watching him. Ethan folded the note and slipped it into his leather folder. He scanned the parking lot, but the elderly man was gone. The only people left were homeowners climbing into their cars, and Victoria Hale speaking quietly with 2 board members. The moment she noticed Ethan looking her way, the conversation stopped. She smiled. It wasn't friendly. It was the smile of someone who believed she had already won. The next morning, Ethan met his attorney, Daniel Brooks, in the county record's office. Daniel spread several property maps across a large wooden table. "The legal description in your grandfather's deed is crystal clear," he said. "If this deed is genuine, the HOA shouldn't own a single inch of your ranch. So why do their maps look different?" Ethan asked. Daniel frowned. "That's exactly what worries me." An archivist disappeared into the storage room to retrieve older survey records. 20 minutes later, she returned looking confused. "I'm sorry," she said. "The original boundary survey from 18 years ago is missing." Daniel looked up immediately. "Missing?" She nodded. "It should be here." Someone had removed one of the most important documents in the county archive. But before Ethan could process that discovery, Daniel's phone rang. He listened for several seconds without speaking. Then he looked at Ethan. "You need to get back to your ranch." When Ethan turned onto the gravel road, his stomach tightened. Nearly 300 feet of his ranch fence had been knocked flat. Several horses had wandered into an open pasture, and frightened cattle were scattered across neighboring fields. Sarah was already helping a ranch hand gather the animals. "What happened?" Ethan asked. She pointed toward deep tire tracks cutting across the grass. "Someone drove straight through the fence during the night." The damage wasn't random. It was deliberate. While Ethan examined the broken posts, Deputy Marcus Reed arrived. "We received an anonymous complaint," the deputy said. "They claimed your livestock escaped because you neglected your property." Ethan stared at him. "My fence was destroyed." Marcus studied the tire tracks carefully. Then he crouched beside one broken post. "This wasn't an accident." Just then, Victoria Hale pulled up in a black SUV. She stepped out wearing sunglasses and carrying a clipboard. "I hope this teaches you," she said coldly. "Unsafe properties don't belong next to responsible communities." Deputy Reed looked at her. "Mrs. Hale, were you here before we arrived?" Her smile faded. "I was checking on my neighborhood." Marcus said nothing, but Ethan noticed him quietly activating the camera on his body-worn tablet. Someone's story wasn't adding up. That evening, Ethan installed new security cameras around the ranch entrance. "I don't like this," Sarah admitted. "They're trying to force us out." Ethan nodded. "Which means they're afraid of something." Just before sunset, an unfamiliar pickup truck rolled slowly into the driveway. A gray-haired woman stepped out. "My name is Linda Carson," she said. "I used to serve on the HOA board." Ethan invited her onto the porch. She glanced nervously toward the road before speaking. "Victoria changed after becoming president. At first it was small things. Then she started moving property lines on community maps." Sarah frowned. "You mean she knew the ranch wasn't part of the HOA?" Linda nodded. "I argued with her." "What happened?" "I resigned." She reached into her purse and removed a flash drive. "I copied several meeting files before I left." Ethan accepted it carefully. "What exactly is on this?" Linda lowered her voice. "Minutes from closed board meetings. And emails. They were planning something much bigger than fake fines." Before Ethan could ask another question, Linda looked toward the street. A black SUV was parked several houses away. Its engine was still running. "They found me," she whispered. Without another word, she hurried back to her truck and drove away. The SUV followed less than 10 seconds later. The following afternoon, Daniel called. "I've reviewed the files." His voice sounded unusually serious. The emails discuss expanding Oak Ridge Estates. Legally? No. They couldn't buy your land, so someone proposed changing the official maps. Ethan stopped walking. That's fraud. It gets worse. One email mentioned forged approval signatures. Another referenced a surveyor who had refused to cooperate. Then Daniel paused. There was also a payment. A very large payment. To who? I don't know yet. But someone was making money from this. That night, another police cruiser arrived. This time, the complaint accused Ethan of trespassing inside Oak Ridge Estates. Deputy Reed listened patiently before asking one question. Can anyone show me the official county boundary survey? Victoria immediately produced another glossy HOA map. Marcus studied it for a moment. It looks brand new. It is, Victoria answered quickly. We recently updated it. Ethan noticed something. The map carried no county seal, no surveyor's signature, no approval stamp, only the HOA logo. Marcus quietly folded the document. I'll be verifying this with the county. For the first time, genuine concern appeared on Victoria's face. She watched the deputy drive away without saying a word. But hidden high above the neighborhood, a drone had captured the entire confrontation. No one on the ground knew that the footage would soon become the turning point in the case. The next morning, Ethan's phone rang before sunrise. It was Deputy Marcus Reed. You need to come to the sheriff's office, he said, and bring your attorney. His calm voice carried an urgency Ethan hadn't heard before. Inside the evidence room, Marcus connected a laptop to a large monitor. We received this anonymously overnight. A drone video filled the screen. The timestamp matched the evening Victoria had accused Ethan of trespassing. The footage showed Victoria Hale and two contractors carrying temporary survey stakes from one side of the property to the other. They removed old markers and replaced them several yards inside Ethan's ranch. Daniel leaned closer. They're moving the legal boundary. Marcus paused the video. It gets better. The drone captured one contractor asking, Are you sure this won't come back on us? Victoria replied without hesitation. Once the county updates the map, no one will question it. The room fell silent. Marcus looked at Ethan. I think we've just crossed from a civil dispute into a criminal investigation. But one question remained unanswered. Who inside the county had been helping her? Within 48 hours, the sheriff obtained a warrant to seize HOA financial records. A forensic accountant discovered payments labeled as survey consulting fees. The money hadn't gone to a licensed surveyor. It had gone to a shell company secretly owned by Victoria's brother-in-law. At the same time, county investigators recovered deleted emails from an old backup server. They revealed discussions about removing original survey records and replacing them with altered copies. Then the final piece fell into place. The missing boundary survey was found in a locked storage cabinet during an audit of the county records office. It had never been destroyed, only hidden. The original map perfectly matched Ethan's deed. Every disputed acre belonged to the Walker family. News of the investigation spread quickly. Local television crews parked outside Oak Ridge Estates. Neighbors who had once believed Victoria began asking difficult questions. Several board members publicly denied knowing about the forged documents. One of them resigned on live television. Another agreed to testify. Victoria, who had once controlled every meeting, suddenly found herself standing alone. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was filled beyond capacity. Judge Helen Morrison entered, and the room fell silent. Daniel Brooks presented Ethan's family deed, the recovered county survey, the drone footage, financial records, and the recovered emails. Each piece of evidence reinforced the next. Victoria's attorney argued that the HOA had acted in good faith. Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. In good faith? She held up the original survey. This document existed the entire time. Then she looked directly at Victoria. Can you explain why your HOA map removed the county seal and replaced official boundaries? Victoria hesitated. For the first time since this case began, she had no prepared answer. Then came the biggest surprise. Linda Carson, the former board member, took the witness stand. I warned the board this would happen, she testified. Victoria told us the Walker family would never return, so no one would ever challenge the new maps. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Moments later, the forensic accountant explained how HOA funds had been diverted through fraudulent invoices. Finally, Deputy Reed played the drone recording. Victoria's own voice filled the courtroom. Once the county updates the map, no one will question it. The recording ended. No one spoke. Judge Morrison quietly removed her glasses. I've heard enough. After a short recess, the judge returned with her decision. The court finds that the disputed 1,100 acres belong entirely to Ethan Walker, she continued. Furthermore, this court finds substantial evidence of fraud, document forgery, misuse of HOA funds, and intentional interference with private property rights. The ruling ordered immediate restoration of all Walker property boundaries, permanent injunction preventing further HOA claims, financial damages to compensate Ethan for destroyed fencing, livestock losses, legal costs, and property damage. Referral of the evidence to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. The courtroom erupted. Some homeowners applauded. Others simply lowered their heads, realizing they had been misled for years. Victoria sat motionless. The confidence that had defined her leadership was gone. Over the following months, Oak Ridge Estates elected an entirely new HOA board. The new leadership publicly apologized to Ethan and Sarah. Together, they worked with neighboring property owners to restore damaged fences, correct official records, and rebuild trust within the community. One Saturday morning, children gathered near the restored ranch entrance for a community picnic. Neighbors who had once viewed Ethan as an outsider now thanked him for standing his ground. Sarah smiled as families walked freely across the land that had belonged to the Walker family for generations. Ethan looked across the rolling hills and remembered something his grandfather used to say. Land remembers who takes care of it. He finally understood. Protecting the land had never just been about ownership. It was about protecting the truth. Because in the end, documents can be hidden, maps can be altered, and lies can spread, but the truth has a way of finding daylight. Moral: truth eventually finds a voice. Asterisk: if you enjoyed this HOA story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. What would you have done if an entire HOA claimed your family land?